been exciting participating in the convening for the past 2 days, yesterday and today, I must say. In the next few minutes, we'll be discussing industry-oriented learning and digital tools for enhancing students' career outcomes. Before I dive deep into this topic, let me do a brief introduction of myself. I am a trained computer scientist. 7 years ago, I started my career in higher education, working with a state university's research and consulting firm, which was set up to provide solutions to organizations in the industry. And I must confess that it was such a tough job. Later on, I founded a company called Kominity Digital. We provide e-learning solutions to corporate organizations and even to higher education too. In the past 1 year, I've been working with the team to lead the development of Bridgia, which we call the first industry and career intelligence platform for higher institutions in Africa. In the next few minutes, as I share more on this topic, I'll be discussing that in detail with us. So, industry-oriented learning and digital tools for enhancing student career outcomes. In the next few minutes, we would look forward to answering the following questions. The first being, how do we approach curriculum development to capture industry needs? One of the most touted mechanisms for ensuring that we prepare graduates that are ready for the industry is having an updated curriculum, not just a state curriculum that we keep recycling every year. So if this is essential, then we need to discuss how do we approach curriculum development to capture industry needs. Also, we'll be answering the question of what digital tools are available out there to higher education to access industry needs and prepare students to be job ready. Like I said earlier, like we discussed in the previous session also, there's a need for employer engagement. But when employer engagement seems to be difficult or it's not going as expected, what digital tools or technologies can we leverage to actually assess industry needs and prepare students to be job ready? And finally, beyond just knowing this, having these answers, how do we implement lessons in the classroom to improve students' career outcomes? How do we bring these lessons into the classroom to ensure that they are implemented to actually enhance students' career outcomes as desired? It is important that we start from the current realities in higher education. And these current realities being that the state of curriculum differs across disciplines. So even though there's a general consensus that there's a need for us to keep revising our curriculum to be updated to the latest industry need, the fact still remains that the state of curriculum differs across disciplines. In some disciplines, the curriculum needs an entire overhaul. In some, it needs some updates. In some, it needs, in fact, it will surprise that the industry needs to catch up in some disciplines. So we can see that the state of the curriculum itself differs across disciplines. Despite these differences, we can then see that there's an emphasis from the industry on the skills of what students can do. So beyond the fact that we approach curriculum from content of what students need to know, employers are saying that beyond what students need to know, I also want students that are capable of doing these things. So beyond just knowledge, employers are emphasizing on skills, what students can also do. Interestingly, we can then see that students' career transitions vary across industries. 3-4 decades ago, you can be sure that if someone studies mechanical engineering, they are most likely to end up in the factory or in the automotive industry. Today, you see engineers that are pursuing careers in investment banking, in consulting, and it is happening across all fields like that. So we then see that students do not necessarily stay in the disciplines that are most likely related to in the industries that are most likely related to their disciplines. This has brought all of us into a consensus that we need to emphasize transferable skills. That means portable skills that students can transfer across industries, that they can transfer across locations. Beyond the fact that industry transitions also differ, we have to also equip students for the global world of work. Abigail asked an interesting question yesterday. She said, when you have students from 15 countries who may also likely end up working in those 15 countries, what does local mean in that sense then? So we can see that there's a collective emphasis on the need for transferable skills. Some call them graduate attributes. Some call them employability skills. I prefer to call them industry skills because they are also necessary for entrepreneurship. Whether it is entrepreneurship employability, these transferable skills are the kind of key industry skills that are necessary for us to embed in students. So these are the current realities facing higher education at the moment. And this is not just an African conundrum, it's a global issue. With the understanding of these current realities, then that brings us into implications for curriculum development. Now that we have understood these realities, what does that mean for our curriculum development? Traditionally, industry-oriented education or learning is always seen as taking an industry perspective towards curriculum development. So right now, we can then see that based on these realities, that curriculum must address both knowledge and skill gaps. So when we are updating curriculum, we are not just updating topics of what students need to know, or the key topics that we need to keep covering. As we are updating curriculum based on knowledge and content, we must also update curriculum based on skills. Beyond what students need to know, we must also update curriculum based on what capabilities or competencies do we need to be able to imbibe in our students. So we must approach curriculum development from both sides, knowledge and skill gaps. The curriculum development must cover both tracks. And we can also then see that, like I said earlier, this has to be brought to the classroom. So we can then finally conclude that industry-oriented learning must facilitate both transfer of knowledge and development of skills relevant in the industry for students to be career ready. Both are important, transfer of knowledge to students and development of skills. This therefore provides an opportunity for faculty, career service professionals, and other industry professionals to work together in the co-development of students. Now that we have been able to look at these implications for curriculum development, it is essential to then state that this is not an easy job. In one of the sessions that we had earlier in terms of assessing employer needs, we could see that a lot of us were expressing our challenges, and that's the reality of things. So we can then see in terms of challenges, there's a wide gap between industry and academia for committed engagement. Sometimes when we start out these initiatives, the industry seems interested, employers seem to want to know what we are doing, but sometimes getting long-term committed engagements can be tough. A friend of mine once joked that sometimes it is sponsoring a beauty pageant is more attractive to the industry sometimes than actually collaborating with academia, even though their workforce has to come from academia itself. So we can say that there's a wide gap between the industry and academia for committed engagement. Another challenge is poor access to information on industries and the labor market. It's also a reflection of the wide gap between industry and academia. So there are limited resources that actually provide in-depth information on our industries and the state of our labor market across Africa. And the third challenge itself being the fact that the classroom itself, quite a number of classrooms are still focused on the traditional teaching methods, whereby it is focused more on transferring information to students and the student recycling back that information during assessment moment. Now, this takes us back to this then answers the first question, like I said earlier, on how should we approach curriculum development. Curriculum development has to be approached from the fact that knowledge and skill gaps have to be covered. Going on to the second question, what digital tools are available out there for higher education to assess industry needs? By the time we look at these digital tools, some of the approaches that some of them employ can provide us interesting insight into how we can actually assess how we can actually assess industry needs. A good example is MC. Before going deep down, so we can then see that there are a variety of digital tools out there that are providing higher education access to industry and labor market information to empower both faculty, students, and career service professionals. It is important to note that even though several of these tools may not be available to us here in this climate, the approaches that they use can provide us insight into how we can actually assess industry needs based on our own locally run initiatives in our campuses or in our companies. The first one is what we call labor market analysis. It's called MC, which is a labor market analytics approach. So what MC does is that rather than sit each employer down to know what their needs specifically are, it collects the job postings of different employers and analyzes them for the different skill sets that employers are actually stating in their job requirement. For well-run organizations, they put a lot of effort into writing what their job descriptions are, whether for entry, mid-level, or top positions. So what MC does is that it analyzes millions of job postings to actually see the trend in terms of the skills being demanded by employers in the industry. Interestingly, in Africa here, we may not have that multitude of data compared to what they have in the developed clients. But for the employers that we are interested in also working with, that's maybe a good place to start. What are their job postings like? What are their job descriptions like? MC goes further to actually analyze what your current curriculum is and can help in identifying the gaps between the current curriculum and what the skills in demand are there, what they really are. It can also help in preparing students for the global world of work. So you can see the different trends in terms of which skills employers are laying emphasis on based on millions of job postings that have been analyzed by this tool. Another interesting tool is LinkedIn Career Coach. This was introduced earlier this year. What this does is that it's rather than take the job description approach, it looks at the top performers in different industries and tries to analyze their career path. Based on those career paths, it can then recommend competencies. The earlier approach, which is based on labor market analytics, looks at the skill gaps, the skills being in demand in terms of job descriptions. This takes a different approach. It looks at the top performers in different industries using their LinkedIn profiles or their publicly available information and looks at their competencies. It then uses these competencies to recommend skill gaps that needs to be closed for students. Also, like I said earlier, we may not have access to this volume of data, but this also provides us an insight towards looking at the different career path of professionals and then being able to use that to identify the skills that may be relevant in our curriculum development. Another popular one, especially with business schools, is what we call the VOT industry guides. So what VOT does is that it profiles different industries, providing information on the key employers, required skills, tips for entry, and provides information on the variety of industry for students. So students can see the required skills across each industry and can then prepare towards working in that industry. This makes it easier for students who want to cross into industries that are not traditionally associated with their disciplines, and they can then find more information about what these industries provide for them on these platforms. The first two platforms, which deals with labor market analytics and analyzing the competencies of top performers in industries, takes a more data-driven approach to analyzing industry needs. While the third one, which is the VOT career guides, takes more of a content approach into developing the content around industry profiles. Earlier, the career service director from Kepler mentioned having some kind of employer profiles too. So they take a more robust approach to developing profiles for different industries, looking at the key players, looking at the required skills. We can also match these methods together, so we can say what does the job description of companies that would like our students to work look like, so that we can prepare in closing those skill gaps. That could be an interesting point of entry into discussing with HR officers about how we can then listen to their needs and know what to prepare for. So, looking at these tools, like I mentioned earlier, quite a number of them are based on they're both for US and UK schools. I mean, that's where they're most commonly used. So a year ago, I think 18 months now, so my team members and I started a project called Bridgia, whereby we are trying to work on an industry profile for African higher education, looking at trying to create information on what our industries are and trying to look at how we can actually make those skill sets available for higher institutions across Africa. It's closely similar to what VOT has done. So it's accessible as a web portal and as a weekly tour whereby we can take students across different industries with some newsletters and resources. I'll be showing us that much in detail over the next few slides. So what we have done with Bridgia is this. Bridgia has around 40 industries already profiled based on Africa's and the world's most active industries. So from agribusiness, automotive, aviation, banking, business support, construction, a variety of industries, even down to waste management, music, and film. You can access a library of this information of these industries in Africa. For each of these industries, you can see an overview of the industry. You can see related industries. You can see the other industries. You can see the African side of the industry. You can see the national profiles. I mean, what the reality of these industries are across different African countries. We have eight African countries featured for now, from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda to South Africa. You can see the international and national agencies that are responsible for regulation in each industry. Like someone asked in one of our earlier sessions about working with regulators across these industries to regulate qualifications and internships in those industries. So students, faculty members, and career advisors can see the international associations and bodies which are necessary for students building their networks across these industries. Students can see careers, roles, and salary trends. What are the highest paying jobs across each industries? We can see the relevant degrees and qualifications. So for example, if I'm coming from a different background and I'm interested in working in an industry in the long term, I can see the required degrees and qualifications, post-qualifications after first degree that are relevant in that industry. It also provides insights on working in an industry. What does it look like to work in an industry? The tips for entry, the top industry skills, industry champions, challenges, innovation opportunities, and research areas in Africa for that particular industry. So in cases where we have research-oriented or very entrepreneurial students, they can see the challenges, they can see the innovation opportunities and research areas in Africa as regards each of these industries. They can also access information on relevant SDGs across each industry, recent trends, trend of digitization across each industry, relevant digital skills, resources for further learning, and the impact of COVID-19 across each of these industries. Something very interesting that we have also done is that you can actually view the profile of each employer across those industries. Right now, we have a database of around 3,000 employers across Africa. So you can see the different employers. You can see their career page, their LinkedIn pages from the platform. Also, interestingly, we must admit that networks also matter in terms of how far our students can go in the industry. And interestingly, the last session featured how we can work with our alumni to actually improve outcomes for students. So in each of these industries, students can actually see the alumni of their institution that are active in that industry using LinkedIn data that can be showcased later. Also, we've been able to work on what we call cost to career outcomes guide. Quite a number of times when we go for career fairs, it will surprise you to hear students still asking, where can I work with my degree? What are my career options? I mean, students are still answering these questions. It's like they feel that their cost of study is where they're starting from. So they want to know what their options are in terms of in what industries what can I do with my degree? What can I do with my major? So what we've tried to do here is that for the different courses, we've created a profile for what are the top industry destinations that graduates from that particular course of study works in terms of top career disciplines, further learning options, and what they actually do with those degrees across industries. Our students also need role models. We also need success stories. So we've created profiles of different what we call industry champions across different industries and with different degrees, so that students can then see in terms of the career path of industry champions that they can also then take lessons from their competencies from. The same thing with recommended resources, relevant industry skills, and also that. We've also worked on what we call industry skills and their relevance. So like I said earlier, we prefer to call it industry skills because industry skills is more encompassing of employability, entrepreneurial, and even graduate attributes as a whole. So for each of these skills, there are micro lessons on techniques of how students can actually develop these skills. They can then see the relevance of each of these skills in their career. So what does that mean for them in the long term, even in the industry? How is this skill used and how can they develop these skills? This is also provided on that solution. So as a recap of this session, we have seen that digital tools can help us to complement our employer engagement initiatives to actually glean insight into what what employers actually need, even when direct relationships can be sometimes prove difficult. They can also help us to prepare students for the global world of work, when it is seemingly impossible for us to access some international set of employers that our students may decide to work with on the long term, or for alumni that are going through a career change. So we can see, like I said earlier, that one of the key techniques is analyzing job descriptions. We can start our conversations with HR professionals from that. Can I get a list of your job descriptions? We can start that analysis from it. This most times, when well written, provide insight into the skill areas that employers are looking into. Digital tools like this can provide us means by which we can look at those things at scale. Another approach is to look at the top performers across industries and look at what their career path looks like, look at what their competencies look like. We can then use that to glean into a list of competencies that may be required, so also that we may also require and we also want to incorporate into our curriculum. You would also remember that earlier I mentioned that curriculum development must be addressed from both knowledge and skill gaps. It is not just about including more topics, but about also covering the skill gaps that are necessary to be closed out for students for each of these disciplines. Now, going over to the final question for this session, how do we then implement industry-oriented learning to improve students' career outcomes? We've been able to establish the fact that both knowledge and skills are essential for industry-oriented learning. We've been able to establish the fact that we can also devise alternative means for identifying the required skills across each industry, which can be supported with digital tools. How then do we implement these lessons in the classroom? It is essential that we start from what a traditional classroom looks like. Typical classroom and career services. So typically in a 16 weeks, or let's say 12 to 16 week semester, we have our classes for course delivery, which unfortunately many times still focuses on transferring as much information as possible to students. Some organize essays, tests, and examinations to test student knowledge. And some students have become very proficient in cramming and pouring back that knowledge to us. Then some institutions, probably in internship or final year, then see a project as a mandatory requirement to obtain a degree that students actually work on in that final year. Most times too, we are assessing that project based on technical knowledge, not necessarily the sphere of skills. Then we can then see career service also operating in a separate silo. So we have career service organizing career fairs, career workshops, and career sessions. So what we have come to do is that we have come to see employability skills as the job of career service and the technical skills as the job of the classroom faculty. When in the real sense, both has to work together. In real life scenarios, these competencies are not assessed separately, they are intertwined. So what that means, we must find a way for faculty, career, and other industry professionals to actually collaborate in actually developing student employability skills and their knowledge for them to be able to meet industry needs. Industry-oriented learning provides a better approach to doing that. Moving from the traditional approach to teaching, it's also interesting to note that some institutions have over time developed their own teaching methods, which are more robust. Some use what we call the tutorial system, some use the supervisory, some use the case studies, which are interesting development. Industry-oriented learning brings a kind of a unique twist to that, to teaching, to learning as a whole. So we can then see that. So I'd like to use an example. So one of my favorite professors has come to devise a different method entirely. For the 12 weeks of a semester, so for the first 6 weeks of that semester, it teaches in terms of the fundamentals of that course, the essential knowledge, the building blocks of that course as a whole. Then we have what we call a project, when we have what we call projects that students can work on. And this project will have industry relevance. How do we know that a project is industry relevant? There's a simple rule of thumb I like to use. The project that students are working on, does it only fit for academic journals, or it's a project that an industry practitioner can come, see, and actually take interest in, or can provide something insightful, can provide insightful information for industry practitioners? So this professor creates projects that students can actually work on for the next 4 weeks of the class. And in the final 4 weeks of that class, rather than take the traditional exams for assessing knowledge, students submit a report on their project and present. These projects are not limited to engineering fields alone. Sometimes they could just be analysis, they could just be interviews, they could be comparative report. It could be a whole set of projects on its own. But what is most important is that it is contextualized to the industry such that students can be able to have exposure to what is available in the industry and can develop their employability skills towards this project. We do not need to start with a whole overhaul of all the courses we are doing. We can start with model courses that actually takes this format into approach. What is also interesting is that at the final assessment of these presentations and reports, the faculty can also bring in career service professionals to actually see students present and provide feedback for assessment. So as we are assessing students by their technical presentations, career service is also contributing to their soft skills in terms of their delivery, in terms of how they interact with their colleagues, in terms of how they answer questions and they present their ideas and facts in delivering their project presentations. So we can see that faculty gets an opportunity for faculty and career service to work together in co-developing students to be industry ready. Like I said, we do not need to start with everything. We can start with select courses to implement this approach. For those of us that are in HE or in the classroom that are interested in implementing this, in addition to this presentation, there's a detailed guide on how we can actually implement this in the classroom with guidance on selecting topics to how to assess industry skills across in that format. Because of time, I think I need to make progress. What are the possibilities with industry-oriented learning approach? What does it make possible? The first one is it makes it possible to contextualize curriculum to industry development. Like I said earlier, the state of curriculum differs across disciplines. Some need overhaul, some need update, some need contextualization. In fact, sometimes the industry needs to catch up on some. So we can then see, but most importantly, the essential basics always remains the same for quite a long time. With industry-oriented learning, we can then create projects, we can then create course modules that contextualizes this to industry development. Let me give you an example. So as a computer science student, I remember that we did a project on a comparative analysis of 3G networks in Nigeria. For the past 2 years, it's been 4G networks. For the past 5 years, it's 5G network. So what happens is that our curriculum then becomes a work in motion. We can keep contextualizing this curriculum to industry development. It also ensures that while students are still on campus, they are exposed to a wide array of industries, from a wide array of industries. They can also build industry relationships or projects that require them to take industry perspective from professionals. They can start working with professionals even right before they need internship or job opportunities. They can start building relationships from that moment. We can also see that we can develop student employability skills. These projects with industry relevance also become portfolio projects for students to include in their CVs. So employers are more interested in what the students have actually been able to do. So we can see that beyond just having a CV that just talks about skills at a surface level, they can actually feature their project, what they've been able to do as their portfolio in that space. And like I said earlier also, faculty and career service can then work together, not as separate entities in developing students for the industry. Recap and key takeaway. At first, I think the first thing I mentioned is that curriculum development must address both knowledge and skill gaps. What employers need students to know and what employers need students to be capable of doing. Both are essential. Curriculum update must go beyond content to capturing competencies in terms of what students need to know and what students need to be able to do. Digital tools and resources such as job descriptions, competence analysis of top performance in industries, and industry profiles can help higher education access insight into industry needs and support students' career preparation. And lastly, skill development can be facilitated within the classroom, providing collaboration opportunities for faculty, career services, and other professionals on student employability. Something I forgot to mention, which is also interesting, is the fact that with that approach too, when you are assessing industry projects from students, you can actually bring industry professionals into the classroom without even formalizing this engagement for them to be able to see what students are doing. Some of these projects can be published in terms of the school social media network, the LinkedIn page, for industries to see the project that students are actually working on. So that brings us to the end of my session. In case you are still interested in discussing what we are doing at Bridgia, we are interested in showcasing that to as many institutions as possible over time. Also, there's a poll for us to actually respond to. There's a poll for us that's for engaging.
I think I really like this presentation because we don't often hear it. And I just wonder, there's a question there, how can my university get support from you? And my question is, how many case studies, how many universities in Africa have taken up adopted what you are doing, because this is fantastic. Who are you working with? Have you assessed, have they actually, piloted it, and you have assessed it and you got feedback? Because I did presentation on university industry collaboration. This is one area of collaborating. Okay, on software access to resources. So I just wonder, who are you working with? Are you working with organizations or HE institutions apart from universities? So for example, in Nigeria, there is the Nigerian, we call it NAME, which is the Enterprise Educators. And I believe that platform could actually be very, very useful, as a way of, you need to be able to speak at different platforms, for people to be aware. It's about raising awareness of what is available. So I've sent you an email, I've sent you a message, maybe if you connect, I can link you to Atlantic University. I think, you should be able to, present this, what beyond even Africa, for institutions that want to collaborate on research, on knowledge exchange, where funding have been available, and they're looking at, stakeholders, other stakeholders, industry that can partner with them. So I think I just want to encourage you to widen your scope, basically.
Much. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Adetutu. I must confess that I enjoyed your presentation, actually. So I actually listened to it. Yeah. So like I said earlier, we started this a year ago. So it's been there's still quite a lot of work to do. So what we have been doing right now is that we have been speaking with some higher institutions. We've spoken to around 12 to get early feedback on what they are really interested in. And it's almost not surprising that most times what they really want is the industry profiles. So one of the challenges that we have is this. The African industry itself is kind of fragmented. So from Nigeria to Ghana to Kenya. So how do you scale across those multiple countries? But right now, based on timeline, in the next few months, I think we should be ready for a pilot. So there are 2 institutions that we are discussing with. I think we'll talk more about that in private later. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm going to follow up on that message so that we can keep talking. Thank you.
Yes, I'm also very interested. In fact, in my school, I'm also in charge of the Center for Student Skills Enhancement.
Oh, okay.
So as you can rightly see, we are much more interested about how we can really build the industry gap to give our students that employable skills to fill that job placement. And the industry itself is also having their own gap in respect to the kind of quality of students who graduate and then their expectation. I think we would also want to collaborate with you and your outfit. And so maybe I'll want to comment so that I will send my email and then maybe we can link up from there.
We'll be expecting. Thank you, Mr. David.
Thank you so much.
There's another question in the chat, please.
Okay, please. Hello.
Yeah, I think during the plenary session, the first day, yesterday, there is the presenter from Aga Khan University and also Strathmore University. I think in Kenya, those 2 universities have really done much in the area of industrial linkages. So I think because I know you are a part and parcel of the presentation, in your piloting, you can check their model and see the mileage or what they have done, and it can support you, especially on East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. So we'll keep the conversation lines open.